The Big Sister Experience is here to share honest conversations and insights around life, mental health, and well-being. While we aim to inform and inspire, the content of this podcast is for general information purposes only. If any topics raises questions or concerns for you, we encourage you to seek professional support or advice before acting on any topics discussed. To begin today's episode, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are recording from, the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We acknowledge that learning through conversation and stories is an Indigenous practice that has been done on this land for centuries before us. We want to pay our respect to any Indigenous or Torres Strait Islander people listening and elders past and present. We acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded and it always was and always will be Aboriginal land.
3, 2, 1. Hey! Welcome back to the Sisterhood Space. My name is Tiara. My pronouns are she, her.
I'm Caitlin and my pronouns are she, her.
If you are new here, we are from a company called the Big Sister Experience. We basically run all-day mental health and wellbeing workshops with students anywhere from year 4 all the way through to year 12, basically giving them some of those tips, tools, strategies, some of the stuff that we wish we knew when we were your age. So we just want to say that we know that it sounds a bit gendered. It's a sisterhood space. We work for the Big Sister Experience. However, it's more about us being those big sister figures, trying to give you just some of that advice, but we want you to enter the space however you feel comfortable. I also want to add, there are just also things that girls and gender diverse people, things that they go through that other people just might not, and that's why we created this space as well. So I can think that all being said, we're the Big Sisters, you're in the space. Welcome to the Sisterhood Space.
Season 2, boundaries. I know in season 1 we talked about boundaries and it's such a big topic. I feel like it can literally go anywhere in any direction, but I'm really excited to dive into this again. So if you don't know, what we do is answer anonymous questions that students give us when we're doing workshops. We know that it can feel really scary to ask a question face to face. So we have compiled a massive box of questions from students and we are going to answer them. The first question feels loaded. I'm I don't even know. The first question is, how do I stop being a people pleaser?
Why do I feel like that's the never-ending question? Because I know for both of us this can run quite deep, and I think it's just so real. It is really relatable of how the heck do we stop? I think let's start with talking about why people-pleasing kind of exists and why do we do it. Actually, I do want to say we in previous episodes have talked about our protective responses, our fight, flight, freeze. We've also talked about fawn, which is a less known one but actually super common, and it quite literally is that people pleasing. So if we're kind of going a bit to the roots of it, it is a protective factor. We do it to fit in, we do it to make sure we don't hurt other people's feelings and things like that. But I think where it becomes negative and the problem with that is that we do it at the expense of ourselves. And it can be really difficult. And I think maybe you come from cultural backgrounds that you need to fawn, you need to people please, or maybe you're in social situations to survive, or maybe to not be bullied. That's what you do to try to get by. And where there's never any judgment when it comes to if you are a people pleaser. But we also know it's not healthy for us. And I know as recovering people pleasers, we are actively trying to work out of it in healthy ways. So I don't know, thoughts, feelings.
I just I know for me, people pleasing is just feels like my default response.
Yeah.
I'm not the one to fight and do that. I'm also not the one to run away. I am the one to just it's okay, everything's okay, don't even worry. And that is honestly such a big journey of me in therapy and me trying to unlearn those behaviors, because I know growing up all I wanted to do was fit in. All I wanted was someone to say, you are pretty, you are funny, you are smart. And I just wanted to fit in. So I would agree with everything. Yep, I'll do this. Yeah, this is fun. Yeah, let's do that. And I just was I'm not happy. I'm not doing things I enjoy. I'm not looking after myself. I'm putting everybody else's needs first. And I'm struggling. And by doing all those people-pleasing things, it can be really hard to then even ask for help once or start opening that, because you're so used to, well, it doesn't matter about me and everyone else first. And then you're well, how do I even tell someone that I'm struggling? How do I even tell someone what I need? Because you don't know how to use your voice. You don't know what that even sounds looks like. And I remember in therapy recently, I was talking about setting boundaries and needing to say no and listening to my gut and not overworking myself. I'm such a hard worker in the sense of perfectionism and wanting to be the best and do the best and succeed. And I was just so overworked and not taking care of myself. I remember my therapist literally being but Do you think that the only reason you're getting these opportunities is because they just like, well, I know she'll say yes. They don't actually think you're the best. They don't think you're the good one. It's just like, well, she'll do it, so we might as well ask her. And I was like, oh. And that really was like, you know what? Like, if I'm going to be the best and do the best, I need to take time off. I need to have a break and I need to show up as my best. Otherwise, I'm going to be doing work like half effort and I'm not actually going to be any good. And then that people pleasing of like, no one's going to like me because I'm not able to do my best. Like, it's a weird cycle, but I remember that just being like, oh, that got me thinking.
I think we have this, I guess, preconception of like being available to everyone at all times is like a positive thing. And I think obviously be considerate and caring and kind of like, yes, that's important. But also, again, coming back to that, if it's at the expense of yourself, you're helping everybody but you. And I think it comes from not wanting to seem inconvenient to anybody else. And I feel like touch on that a bit more in the next question. But I think like it really comes from you care about how you're being perceived and like you just don't want to be a problem to other people. And I think the people pleasing, it's something I think especially, and I'm using gendered language like 100% in this, but especially as girls, as female identifying people, is that we are so conditioned to make ourselves smaller so that we don't take up space, to make sure there's enough space for everybody else. Whereas a lot of the times, and again, I'm generalizing, I'm using gendered language, but what we see a lot of the times is males taking up all that space with like no issues at all. And like the whole like, oh, I wish they had the audacity of a man.
Yeah.
And it would help us, I think, because sometimes we're so used to shrinking ourselves and it helps everybody but us.
Yeah.
And it just all contributes to all of this. And like you said, it's like, but are you actually doing it because they think you're like the most qualified or you can actually do this? Or is it just like they know that you're going to say yes, so they take advantage of it, or like they can rely on you in that way? And again, I'm not saying like, you know, don't be reliable and things like that. However, again, is it serving you? Is it because you genuinely want to do it? You genuinely feels like it aligns with you? And when I'm talking about this as well, it's the stuff that we do have choice over. It's not like I feel like I'm people pleasing because I have to go to school. It's like, no, you need an education. Like you're lucky to have one. But in terms of like maybe in friendship groups or with peers, figuring out if you're making choices for you or for them.
I think so often in friendships as well, like when I was saying the start feels the hardest of like when you're first kind of setting that boundary and first saying no or first like doing that thing, that always felt like really scary. But now I look back and like my friends have never gotten mad at me for being like, hey, so sorry, can't make it to that thing, like I'm swamped at work, or setting those things and saying no to things or agreeing for things. Is like no one's actually ever been mad at me for like setting that boundary. And same with my friends, like if my friends come to me and we've like planned a dinner in 2 weeks and like, hey, like I'm so sorry, like this has come up or I've got this, I'm not gonna be like, oh, like she never wants to see me or like she always does this. I'm like, people understand that people have lives and people have these things, and if the reason you're people pleasing or if you're noticing that by setting those boundaries and by doing things and not being respected, that's not your friend, that's not your person. Like your actual friend is gonna understand when you're setting those boundaries and when you're being like, hey, I actually can't do this, or do you mind doing this? Like they're gonna listen and want to kind of help it. And it's not even a second thought. Like I literally just had a friend today send me a voice memo being like, I'm feeling really down, like this isn't my week and this is happening. And I was like, let me know if I can do anything, like rest, like look after yourself. Like I'm not taking that as like
Personally,
an attack.
Yeah.
I'm not taking that as anything. I'm just like, hope you're good. Yeah. And I think a lot of people feel like it's all about them and I don't want to let them down and I'm worrying about me. And I'm like, everyone else is so worried about themselves. No one cares.
But I think it's so interesting that you said whenever you have used your voice in a way that sounds different to other people's, they've never been like, oh, that's exactly how it should be. But I think growing up and when I was younger, that is exactly why I fell into the people pleaser, because I was around people who did the opposite. As a kid, I was very like outspoken, I was loud, I still am. But I think like I was really okay to give my opinions on things. But then during high school, it started being like people biting back or disagreeing in ways that made me feel smaller. And that really fostered that people pleasing of, oh, like I feel like I'm causing the problem, or like it's not okay if I have my own opinion, because I was in environments where I feel like I would to be made to be different in a bad way. I think similar to a lot of people just wanted to like fit in and like not be, don't like notice me, I'm not doing anything different, that you just fall into that. And I think I was trying so hard to do all of that I think at one point I like stopped and I was like, but I am so exhausted. I'm so drained. I'm not having a good time. I was like, what if I just stopped? What if I just stopped and see if it changes anything? And I think it really didn't change much. I think to the people I was around at the time, I think it didn't matter that I was putting in all this effort and I was like trying to make sure everybody was okay and da. That like when I pulled back, I realized like that effort was not being as reciprocated. And I'm like, I am people pleasing for you at the expense of me, and I'm not having a good time, and you don't even want to be around me for me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what was the point of it all?
Yeah.
Going through that, I think a little bit has helped me try and kind of curb the people pleasing a little bit. But I think if we're trying to answer this question directly, like how do I stop being a people pleaser? Start by noticing what you want for you, what aligns with your values, with your wants, with your needs, based on what you want and not what you think everybody needs from you.
I also feel like when I think about people pleasing, I'm going to generalize this into friendships. Like I know for me, I want to be a good friend and everyone wants to be a good friend, but I can only be a good friend when I'm looking after myself. I'm not a good friend because I'm agreeing to do everything for you and because I'm doing everything for you and I'm helping you and I'm doing that for you. I'm a good friend when I'm taking care of myself because then I show up to the things we do happier, better, more excited, more energy. Like I can give you more. I can be like, yeah, I actually can help you out with this. Like I can do that because I've taken care of myself first. So when my friend is like, hey, can you drop me here? Yep, I'm feeling good. Can we do this? Like, yeah, I can do this because I've taken care of myself first. I'm genuinely showing up as a better friend to the people around me and just as a better person to the people around me by looking after myself first. And that means I can do those people pleasing things. I can say yes to the things. I can agree to that. I can help you because I'm feeling good.
But I don't even think that's like people pleasing things. That's you doing it because you genuinely want to do it. And I think this is where I think we get into the nitty gritty of people pleasing of at the end of the day, people pleasing is actually lying. It's actually kind of manipulative because it's not what you want to do. And I feel so lucky to be surrounded by majority people who aren't people pleasers, because I know when I do ask them something and when they do say yes, they're doing it because they genuinely want to, not because they feel like they have to. I think being surrounded by a lot of people pleasers in the past, you never know where you stand. You never know if what you're saying is okay or if you're being accepted or if people are doing things because they genuinely want to. You're always kind of second guessing, and that is so stressful. Like you don't want to be around that. I didn't realize what a difference it made being around so many people pleasers and then removing myself from that, because I don't need to worry what you're thinking all the time, and then I don't need to people please around your people pleasing. Obviously with the intentions of people pleasing, it is very like genuine. You just want to, you know, be a good friend and all of those things and like be caring to the people around you. However, if you aren't, like you said, taking care of yourself, right, it is not genuine. It's not authentic. It's not going to last. And I think we talk about this a little bit, it builds resentment.
Yeah. I also think that when you have those friendships and when you don't feel comfortable setting a boundary, or when you're only people pleasing and somebody else sets that boundary, like, hey, can't do that, it feels really personal because you know you wouldn't do it. And then it's like, well, they don't like me or they're this. And I'm like, no, like they're busy. And that's okay. Like you're allowed to be busy. And I think that start can be so difficult. And when you are surrounded by people pleasers, to have that boundary set, you're like, oh. But when you're like around people that set those boundaries, you can have that. And when you can have that healthy communication, which unfortunately for me, like came with time. Like when I was in high school, my friends were not sat around like, it really makes me feel. And it's like, no, like we're not having that kind of emotional intelligence, or like we're not doing that. But now, like as an adult, able to kind of open up those conversations and see that, it's so interesting hanging around those different vibes.
100%. You're so right, because I think like we talk about it as adults being like, this is what we're doing now, hoping that you'll do it as well.
Can you do this before I did?
Yeah,
like,
please.
You would be so much better off. I wish.
100%. But I think it is also like hard to be like, yep, do this when you're in a school context, and a lot of the times things are made into jokes, banter, like we're not seriously talking about this stuff. And I think that's how I felt in high school, of when I did bring up things, it was like not taken seriously, or it was like, oh, well, you do this and you do that. And I was like, oh, this is not making me want to set boundaries because it's not respected. And I think a lot of us as well come from upbringings or families or whatever it is that boundaries is so difficult. And I really quickly want to touch on this. I think this could be a whole different episode, but I think in general, when we're talking about boundaries, again, it's coming back to that protective response of there might be times where it might actually be unsafe to set boundaries. It might make your situation worse. At the end of the day, we want you to trust your gut. You know your situations better than anybody else. You are the leaders of your own lives. Yes, like you might be told like you're young, like you're still growing, hormones, puberty, whatever all that BS is, right? But at the end of the day, you know your lives more than anybody. You are the leaders of your lives. So trust your gut in that, especially when we are talking about setting boundaries of like, we always say, especially in workshops, start in those low pressure situations where like, yes, okay, maybe it's with a friend and you might get that bite back potentially, but starting with something small and then building your way up with the bigger things. We always say boundaries, it's like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. So starting with the small things, working your way up because it's only going to make things a bit easier. I do have an example from a dating reality show, and there was this guy who he was with this girl and he was really enjoying getting to know her, but she was also interested in somebody else. And he had talked to another girl previously, but he chose by his own accord to cut things off with the previous girl so he can focus on the girl in front of him, right? And he did that and verbalized this to some other people. He was like, I did that to show her like I'm interested in you, hoping that you would cut it off with him. However, she never said she was going to do that.
Yeah.
You made that choice for you. You chose to do that. Just because you've made that decision now doesn't mean she has to follow. She's allowed to have her own choice and opinion.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that's like that situation felt really people pleaser of him, because it's like you made that decision hoping that she would do the same, not having communicated with her. You've set like an invisible expectation, and then now you're mad that she's not doing it, even though she never said she was going to do it in the first place. And I think that is where people pleasing can get really messy. And like I said, that resentment can start to build because you're not communicating. And I think how to stop being a people pleaser, another tip, start communicating.
Yeah.
And I think even talk about how hard it is to do that. And I think I've brought this up multiple times, but I literally had a conversation with a friend and I was like, oh, you know, I'm not really confrontational. Like I'm bad at bringing things up. And he was literally like, it doesn't have to be confrontational. It can just be conversational. And your people are going to respect you, or even if they don't understand it at first, they're going to be curious and caring enough to hear you in that. And again, I think this comes with time and more emotional intelligence, but I think even just the follow-up of asking as the friend, like, what can I do to make you feel safer in this?
What do you need? What do you like? Yeah.
100%. And sometimes we don't know what we need, but I think just knowing that somebody's willing to hear us can be really, really helpful.
Yeah. I think what you were saying before about it being a muscle and like coming with time is such an important kind of thing for our next question, which is, does saying no always feel so hard? It is literally the whole thing of like, it's a muscle.
Yes.
It feels really hard. Like I was saying before, like the first time I did it and like you don't know how to say no and you don't know how to set those boundaries, and it does feel hard. Like it's scary. It's something new, but in time, the more you practice using your voice, the more you do it for those low pressure situations, it's easier for the bigger pressure things, and you don't even kind of realize it until suddenly you're looking back and you're like, wait, I just did that. That was easy, or I can do this. And I want to acknowledge that sometimes when you do say no and you do set boundaries, it's not respected and it's not listened to, and that hurts. That can be really hard. And when you've built up all that courage to like have that conversation or to like do that thing and then it's not respected, like that is a punch to the gut. Like that's a step back, and like I get that, but sometimes people don't respect your boundaries because they don't even know how to set a boundary. They would never have done that. Like even in that couple in that reality show, like the guy doing that is because he never would have had that in-person conversation, and so for the girl to be like, well, I actually won't do this and I wouldn't do that, that can feel like it's a target. That can feel like it's attacking you. And I'm like, sometimes setting those boundaries is hard because that person doesn't know how to respond because they would never do it, and you're kind of branching out and doing that, but it doesn't always feel so hard. It can, and it will, and it takes time, but when you find the right people, when people genuinely want to listen and care about you, they will listen to that no and that will be respected. But I just want to know, it's like, it sucks to say no and have that not respected.
And I think it's not a blanket like yes or no, in terms of like there will be sometimes it'll be so easy. Yeah. I'll be like, great, like brilliant, like this is how I wish it always was. But then there will be sometimes that like it won't be that easy. And I want to say, to kind of help the situation or like help yourself in those situations, curb your expectations. I think sometimes, like you said, when you build up all that courage to do it, you're like, I'm going to do it and it's going to be fine. You don't know how it's going to be sometimes. So sometimes it is about like going in knowing that there could be a range of answers. Like there could be a yes, there could be a maybe, there could be a no. I think there are definitely layers to this. It's hard to talk about it generally because there's so many different aspects. I think when it comes to your physical, emotional, sexual, intellectual safety, all of those things and anything else I've forgotten, if your no's are not respected, take care of yourself first. Make sure you can protect yourself and your safety and like do that, because we're not saying them saying no is okay sometimes. Sometimes it's not. Like there's plain, like sometimes there's legal things involved. Sometimes there's like just pure disrespect, right? And we want to acknowledge that and be like, we're not saying you're wrong or invalid for not taking somebody's no. Sometimes you're so right and they should have respected your no and they didn't. And that is terrible. There are definitely things that are more on the extreme ends and the harsh ends that do happen kind of often that I want to acknowledge, like that will never be your fault. It is not your fault. However, we're talking a bit more, I guess, gently. We're talking a bit more, maybe less serious. Have an idea or like have an understanding that you're not always going to get the answer that you want. And I think in general, like in life, you're not always going to get what you want. So go in with if you're planning to have these like courageous conversations, or if you're just planning to try and set boundaries, that it might not always at first go the way you wanted to. Notice again, and I think this is something we say a few times, of notice patterns of behavior. If you are constantly trying to set boundaries and it's constantly not being respected, is that a relationship or a friendship that you want to foster? Is that one you want to stay in and keep growing with, like within, especially because you're not being respected or you're not being thought of or considered or cared for? Does it feel hard? Yes, sometimes. But I think like we said, the more you practice it, the easier it'll get from your end to do it, understanding that there could be a range of answers.
Yeah. And I think the more you do it, the more responses you get. So you're not as like shocked by it because you're like, yeah. And it's easier because you've had the practice, and saying no and having it like not respected, or like setting those boundaries and having them not listened to, like feels easier because you're like, well, that's not my fault. That's not a reflection of me. And you can like kind of grow from that and everything gets a bit easier with time. But sometimes it can feel hard. I just want to like validate that.
Yeah. And I think it's going to be harder the longer you avoid it. I think, yeah, honestly, it really is that almost like exposure therapy of like, which isn't easy. It's not easy. But like you said, the more you do it, the more you'll get used to different responses and things like that. And again, starting with those small things,
and the easier it will sound. Like the more you say it, and it becomes easier to like have that sentence structure, because you can be like, hey, like, can you do this or can you do that? And hearing a no or getting a boundary or like whatever the response is, you're just more, you've had more exposure to it. You're more likely to be, yep, cool. Like it doesn't feel as big because it's happening more.
And I think with that as well, sometimes we're afraid to hear the no because it makes us feel invalidated. And like sometimes like, yes, it does make us feel invalidated. However, let's say, for example, you made a joke to me that I was hurt by, and you respond with like oh, it's just a joke. And so I feel really invalidated by that. What would help me in that situation is knowing like I'm still valid in how I feel, and they didn't hear that, and that's more on them than it is on me. And it is hard still to deal with because that's not a great response. However, like I still know that I was valid in my feelings, and like I felt hurt. And even if it was a joke, I felt hurt. And that is just the situation. And even if like they're not going to respect it, I'm not going to then invalidate myself because I felt invalidated by them. And I think just reminding yourself of that. It's not just like okay, yeah, cool. Like I'm still valid. If you're like that, great. Like I love that in terms of like if you have that situation happen to you and you're automatically like, yep, I'm still valid. I know that. Great. Love that self-assurance. For a lot of us, that can be really hard. And for me, I would take a hit a little bit. Like I would feel it, but I would just try to keep reminding myself. I tried to set that boundary for a reason. It didn't sit right with me for a reason. And okay, they don't respect it, but I know I wasn't making up what I was feeling.
I could literally talk about this for ages. I feel like
100%.
there's so many different
layers to
variables,
it.
different situations.
100%.
There's so much to it. But every episode, we love to end it with our leaves and our loves of the week. What are you leaving this week?
What am I leaving? I think almost like preparing myself sometimes that people aren't going to understand or they aren't going to hear it, right? And like that's not great for sure, but in terms of that's not going to deter me from still trying to set boundaries. I think in the past I would have been a lot more avoidant, been like, okay, well if they see it this way, no one's going to understand it or whatever. So I'm just going to be like, okay, I'm just not going to do it. Like I'm going to people please. I'm not going to say no, right? Yeah. But not letting those no's stop me from trying.
Yeah, we're leaving that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like, and again, it's always planting that seed. I think I'm just gonna try. But I think also the more you do say no, the less you people please, you are gonna find people who align with you more. And sometimes that takes like growing up, and maybe sometimes you're lucky and it happens in school.
And just meeting new people. Like
Exactly.
in school, you're surrounded by the same people.
Yes.
Leaving means you meet people at work, you meet people at that. You're just doing more that
you wouldn't
Yeah.
have being in that school environment. Yeah. So I think, yeah, I'm leaving feeling like knocked down when boundaries, if boundaries aren't met.
I feel like it's really broad if I'm just like, I'm leaving people pleasing.
Yeah.
But I am. I'm leaving the small people pleasing.
Yeah.
Like, I can say no to doing that thing. I don't have to do this. Like, I'm saying no to those like small little things because I don't have to and I don't need to and I need to leave that. So that's what I'm leaving.
I think that really ties into my love because I think I'm loving working out of my people pleasing and being surrounded by people who don't people please because I think it just it takes a weight off. I don't have to guess what you're thinking. You don't have to guess what I'm thinking. And also, like, when I'm saying I genuinely want to help you, I mean it. And it's not because I feel like I have to. And I think, like, I've always cared, but I think I was more worried about, like, oh, how you perceive me and, like, am I doing enough for you? But now I'm like, when I'm doing it because I care about you and I genuinely want to do it. And I think I'm loving that. I'm loving, like, being a recovering people pleaser of, like, working out of it because it just genuinely feels like personal growth.
Yeah.
100%. But I think it also, it just makes me feel more like, like, great. And I love, and I think this was my last love when we did boundaries, but I love people setting boundaries with me as well.
Yeah.
Of, like, I think I'm like, great, amazing. Like, you feel safe enough to do that with me. And I'm always going to try and validate, even if I don't always agree, I will still validate your emotions and we'll find some sort of solution. So I think I'm loving lots of things when it comes to boundaries. But yeah.
Crazy. I'm loving my own boundaries.
Yes.
I am loving my little alone time. I'm loving doing things I enjoy. I'm loving setting those boundaries of like, I actually can't do that. I actually need this. Like, I'm loving setting boundaries, which is a crazy sentence to say because I don't think I've set a boundary like ever. But now I'm like, I'm loving it. It is genuinely so like protective and I feel like I've got my bubble, I've got my people. I'm like, I'm chilling, like, love it.
And I think in general, and I like love that so much because I think in general, the more you start to respect your own boundaries, it causes a ripple effect. Like, more people respect your boundaries when you respect your boundaries. If you don't set boundaries, people are going to walk all over you. They are going to take advantage of that sometimes, right? So I think, like, I love that you're loving setting boundaries because I think it is healthier for your relationships, but also yourself. So I love that.
Yeah.
Yay. Amazing. So
we'll see if we actually do these things. We'll see. We'll check back.
No, I actually think like we are doing these
This
things.
feels
Yes. Like, it's not just like planting the seed a bit. I think we are walking the walk a little bit, which I do like love. And I think whether it's a slow or a long journey, like, it's fine because we're doing it and we're trying. But yeah, that's a bit about boundaries today. Please don't forget to like, comment. If you're on, the reason we say rate, I also just want to explain, on like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, that really like helps like boost the algorithm, things like that. So please like rate our podcasts, leave just comments, whatever you want to see. We really, really want to make it your space. So in all of our descriptions, we have a Google form where you can submit your own questions. It's a Sisterhood Space. We want to invite you in as much as possible. We really want it to be more like young people focused. And so please just like do all of the things. So to end our episode, we are going to send you a beautiful whoosh of love for your week. Are we ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Whoosh! Bye!
Here are some resources for further support.
Lifeline 131114. Beyond Blue 1300 224 636. 1-800 RESPECT 1-800-737-732. Suicide Callback Services 1300-659-467. 13-YARN 139276. Q Life 1-800-184-527. Kids Helpline 1-800-55-1800. 1-800 My Options 1-800-696-784. Ask Izzy www.askizzy.org.au. Shapes and Sounds JUSTSHAPESANDSOUNDS.co.